If you're thinking about buying a home
or selling a home,
make sure that you listen to our show today. Welcome to the Sonic Boomers. I'm Pete.
And I'm Maureen.
Every episode, we get behind these mics and we talk about the things that we pull off the top of our heads.
And sometimes out of somewhere else.
And the month of March is a big month for Maureen and I because, no, it's not our anniversary.
It's not our birthdays.
So what could it possibly be?
Could it be the sale of our house and buying this house?
Buying Yellow House. We got here in March of 2020, just under the wire, just as the pandemic was starting to rev up. Because I remember our realtor said, boy, you guys got this done in the nick of time.
Absolutely.
This probably would not have happened. Mm-hmm. And we want to talk to you today about if you're thinking about selling your home or buying, and your chances are you're going to do both. We want to talk about the things that we think we did right and the things that we did wrong. Now, Maureen and I are not realtors. We're clearly not experts on real estate. We just want to share with you, looking back at it now, 4 years down the road, what we think we did well and what we probably could have done better.
Right. And hopefully that will be helpful to some of you.
We also would like to recommend a YouTube to you, and that's Audra Lambert, who is out in California. I think she's in LA.
I think so.
She's a very, very successful realtor, and she has put together a really informative and entertaining series of videos about real estate and buying and selling. And just in the last few shows that we watched from her, we learned things.
Yes, which has kind of prompted us to
do
think
this.
about this. So what do you think we did rightest when we were selling our home?
Well, they tell you, and this was from Audra, to try to interview 3 realtors before you decide who you're going to go with. Well, that we did not do.
We didn't interview them. However, I did scope out their websites and look at some of the ads that were being placed and kind of get a sense of who was the movers and shakers in the area.
And there was one guy in the area.
Silvio Lavrador.
Right, and he works in the Essex County area.
Basically, and some Union County too, I think.
And Silvio Lavrador was the guy that we wound up going with. You cultivated that relationship before we even hired the guy.
Well, at one point, we were looking ahead to selling our house. We knew at some point we would be doing that. That was in the master plan. And I was looking online at prices in our area. Now, we were in an urban area, not a very desirable part of the town. And the prices were all over the place. And thousands of dollars difference, $50,000 differences. So I texted with Silvio and I was like, I'm looking at comps in the area and I can't come up with anything as a realistic goal of what we can get for this house. And he told me, yes, you're right. It's crazy. It's all over the place, but this is the range that I think. Tell me about your house, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is what I think you can look at it in the range. And from that point on, he consistently would contact me with an email, and maybe once a month, every a couple of months, didn't make a pain in the ass of himself, and would share some valuable information. Hey, Maureen, the house 2 blocks over just sold for this. Hey, Maureen, the banks are doing this thing now for first-time home buyers. It's a good time to list your house. Those kind of information-based
and he
emails.
kept in touch, thereby keeping himself kind of in the front of our mind.
Right, and without being pushy, it was not like a hard sales pitch or anything like that. It was just, if you pick me, fine. If you don't, that's okay too. But I have some information that you might need. It was the gist of the conversations, and eventually it paid off for him and for us because we ended up going with him. And this is like maybe a year and a half, 2 years before we actually went and listed, and he had the patience to wait it out. And to me, that said a lot.
And what we liked about him was he discussed with us the things that are worth fixing and the things that you don't want to fix.
Right. Because we told him right from the get-go, look, we don't mind putting a few thousand in, but there's no more than that.
Yeah.
And if worse comes to worse, we'll list it as is. And that was like a conversation. He's like, no, you don't want to be as is, because right away that means that you're going to get a much lower offer.
Because people are going to say, they're selling it as is. Where is, how much am I going to have to sink into it? What is this house, a dog?
What's wrong with it? Why don't they want to fix it? So he's like, you don't want to do as is. And he told us, the things that he thought were worthwhile fixing. And we did most of them. But I have no regrets there.
We also were ruthless in clearing stuff out of the house. And it is amazing in the 36 years that we were there, the stuff that you accumulate.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know that it's there. But when push comes to shove and you're suddenly boxing and having to move the stuff, now it hits home, or at least it did for me. It was like, oh my God, do we really want to move all this stuff?
The answer to that is no. When you see all the stuff that you have, you don't want to move it. And Maureen and I have two different methods of cleaning stuff out. And my method is, the white tornado method, which is if you haven't touched it in a year, chances are you're not going to touch it. Get rid of it. And Maureen has a little different way of looking at it.
It's not even just a way of looking at it. It's experience. I guarantee you that when that happens in 2 weeks, and it's almost always that short amount of a time, when I suddenly need it. And money was tight for us for so many years, and it irks me to think of having to throw something out.
Money was so tight for us for so many years that it squeaked. It needed a drop of oil.
It irked me, and to me it was wasteful to throw something that was perfectly good out that I know that at some point I was going to be using, even if it wasn't in your 1 year timeline, sir, that to throw it out and then turn around and buy it again. What sense does that make? So that's my platform there, my soapbox.
In spite of these differing philosophies, we did manage to throw out a hell of a lot of stuff, or find a home for it.
Right. Like we kind of had layers of throwing out. Like there was the stuff that nobody was going to want. We put to the curb.
We put it away at the housewarming, and that was the last time it had human hands on it. That's the stuff that was easy to just throw out
and put to the curb. But then the next layer were things that were still in very good condition, but we knew we weren't going to be using. And it made it easier, at least for me, to get rid of if I could say it's going to some good, if it's going to somebody who will be able to use it and enjoy it and get some benefit from it. And that's where the largest part of our purging took place. And we took it to a thrift store called Unique. And what we liked was, like, their parking lot was set up in such a way that you could pull right up to the curb, unload your car alongside their building, and pull away. There's no interaction. Now, we also had originally, before we knew about Unique, we had tried going to Goodwill and to Salvation Army. And when we went there, they wouldn't even let you unload the car without them looking through the boxes and picking things out. And we'll take this and we won't take that. It wasn't a good experience, and they made you feel like you had crap. And some of the stuff the stuff we were donating was very good stuff. It was just we weren't going to use it.
It's true. We didn't give them junk. We just gave them stuff that, if it was junk, it went to the garbage man.
Right.
If it was stuff that was very usable and needed a home, it went to Unique.
Right. So that's where we got by and large, the lion's share of our things were purged and sent there. Believe me, we made numerous trips there, probably a dozen trips of loading up the car, bringing it down, and getting rid of as much as we could. And that was helpful, too, because it made the house less cluttered when people were coming to look at it, and it also made the move that much easier.
Now, what would you say were the mistakes that we made?
I don't think we made too many in selling. The biggest one that I regret is not communicating better with our realtor. He came the one day, I thought, just to drop off some papers for us to sign, and instead he was going to take the pictures that day, and he didn't tell us that. The quality of the photos were fine. It wasn't like, they were that bad.
They were decent.
But I just felt like I would have liked to have spruced up the house a little bit more if I knew that that's what he was going to do that day. And, I was a little bit less than happy with some of the photos that he took.
You want to remove the clutter as much as possible, because even though a potential buyer, when they take possession of your home, the house is going to be empty.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're looking at the house and they see it's cluttered, it immediately translates in their head, oh, this is small.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough room in here for me and my family and my stuff. So you want to get rid of any kind of clutter. You want as much open space as possible. They want you to take personal pictures down. Your kids, your wife, your husband, your vacation in Bermuda, whatever. If it's of a personal nature, you want to get it out of there, because you don't want to be telegraphing to your potential buyer that this is my house.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to see the potential of it being their house. They want to be able to see themselves in that space.
Exactly.
And when you've got too many personal accoutrements, it defeats that purpose.
Oh, when you speak French, you drive me wild. The other thing that I think that we did wrong, or we could have done better, is we hired professional movers, and we should have let them do their job. Instead, there were certain things that we were concerned about and that we wanted to move ourselves, and it wasn't necessary. We worked so hard. We were exhausted physically in the moving because of how much we lugged ourselves. And I think in retrospect, we should have just said, leave it up to the pros.
I don't know how many trips I made back and forth between the house that we bought and the house that we sold. But I know there were a lot of trips. It seemed like I was constantly going back to grab this, that, and the other thing. And I think even our daughter and our son was grabbing
all the
stuff.
All the kids helped out. I think that was a big mistake. I don't even know if I would call it a mistake, but it was something I regret. That
I'd say it was a mistake.
It took its toll on us, and it didn't need to be. Yeah,
I mean, it's one thing if you're 20-something or 30-something, but, we're both 70 now.
Yeah.
And we're here for you. So we were both like 66-ish when we sold the place. And you don't want to be 66 and buggy lugging a lot of stuff out to the car and making repeated trips back and forth. And,
right.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be moving again. I would not make that mistake again if I were moving. I would just say, no, I'm paying you to move the stuff, so
you do it.
I'll just point and tell you where to put it.
Now, when we bought this house,
talking about what we did right.
What we did right.
Yeah.
When all those other things we were talking about was when we sold. Now we're going to talk about, as buyers, what did we learn from that experience? I think one of the things that we did right was using online resources ahead of time and looking through the listings online. And then we got a sense of certain neighborhoods and certain areas that we thought would be a good fit. And we got in the car on a Sunday or a Saturday and we rode out to these different places. I remember going and making a list of addresses of houses that were listed. And this was without a realtor. We did this totally on our own, just to get a sense of because let's face it, some of these pictures make it look like a palace.
And also see the neighborhoods.
And, right.
That was very important to us because the neighborhood that we lived in previously had a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. And we were victimized by those issues more times than we would care to remember. And so when we were moving, we were like, we're not doing this again. Mm-hmm. And so we took a lot of time scoping out neighborhoods and driving around and just getting an impression of, was this a good place to be, not a good place to be? Drive around the schools, see what's going on there, see when the school lets out what's going on, are there problems? Like they tell you, location, location. Scope out the location and see if it's a place where you feel safe. And again, for Maureen and I, being of a certain age, you definitely want to be in an area where you're not going to feel endangered.
Exactly. And also, too, the curb appeal that you see in the photos is not always what you see when you get there firsthand.
Yep. There were houses that we saw that, oh, this looks nice. And we would drive out there and we would be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So once we kind of got a few neighborhoods in our scope that we kind of narrowed it down, then we contacted the realtors and said, okay, we want to see this house on, Main Street and this house on 2nd Avenue and blah, 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 and set up the appointments. And we went to see, when they had open houses, we went to some of those as well. And that's how we did the looking.
You get a better idea of the neighborhood. You get a better idea of what your money can buy and how much you're going to get for what you're willing to spend in one neighborhood versus how much more can I get in another neighborhood, or how much less will I get for the same dollar.
Exactly. So all that was part of our process of shopping for the home. We sold our house very quickly.
It sold in a weekend.
We have a whole thing we can tell you about that later. But we basically had about 90 days to
sell, buy, and get out.
And move.
Yeah.
So, a lot of our decisions were driven by that ticking clock in our brain going off, 90 days, 89, 70, And so therefore, we made some rushed decisions that maybe were not the best. Once we found this house, we made a full price offer. And I mean, in one respect, it was the right thing to do because it got us the house we wanted. But on the other hand, there's always that part of me anyway that says, I wonder if we offered a little bit lower, if he would have gone for it. Especially
after we moved in, we found out some things that I wouldn't say that they clearly were not illegal. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if I would say it was unethical. It's just that we bought Yellow House, which is what we call our home here. We bought it from a flipper. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the gentleman that owned this house before we came lost the house. It was foreclosed. And another guy bought it as an investment property and did some work inside here, but he did it on the cheap. And so we found these little, I call them landmines, after we moved in.
Right.
And then it was like, well, geez.
It's too late to do anything then.
Too late to do anything. And so we wound up doing it, and, we're glad we did. We probably would have done them anyway.
Yeah.
But there were just some things that I look at it and I'm like, if I knew that, I would have said, let's negotiate a little bit on the price. And of course, the realtor, not Silvio Labrador, who sold our old house, but the realtor that took us around and showed us this house, she recommended full price offer. But of course she's going to do that because it's her commission.
Of course. And the other thing that we regretted was we wanted to have the home inspected to make sure that there wasn't anything really bad. And we didn't know one inspector from another.
Big
So
mistake here.
we were used to dealing with Silvio, who had a guy. So we said to our realtor on the buying end, you know anybody that's good? We want to do a home inspection, and she gave us.
She had a guy.
She had a guy.
She had a guy.
Trouble is, her guy.
Her guy was roughly my age. He was licensed. He was a licensed inspector. He
Yeah.
presented his curriculum
Credentials,
vitae.
yeah.
And all that was on the up and up. But he was a guy like my age who was just recovering from a heart attack. And so instead of going up into the attic and crawling around like the guy that bought our house,
Yeah.
guy went up into the attic and took pictures and looked at stuff and said, well, I don't like this. I don't like that. This guy opens up. There's like a little hatchway that you open to get into the attic. And he sticks his head up in there with a flashlight. And he looks around and it's like, looks okay to me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking now, that's no way to inspect the attic, to inspect the roof and the rafters and
I know.
the beams and everything, you know, like what kind of an inspection is that? And, you know, the thing that he did right was he said, you know, your heating set, your HVAC is 16 years old. Your hot water heater is 16 years old. I'd talk about replacing them if I were you, blah, blah, blah. That was kind of okay. But it was, I thought it was kind of a low ball inspection. It wasn't a thorough inspection.
It was. And again, you know, that's something I would never do again.
And of course, letting the person that you're going to buy that house through, that realtor, letting them use their guy, of course, he's going to find a minimal of issues because he doesn't want to screw up the deal for the realtor.
And he has no skin in the game.
He's got no skin in the game.
Yeah.
So I think what we should have done was hire
our own guy.
our own inspector independently of either realtor.
Absolutely.
And let that be a lesson to you.
But we, you know, at the time, again,
Time was of the essence. We wanted to get this done.
Somebody. We just, you know, we were used to dealing with Silvio, whose guys were good,
Yeah.
and we just assumed it was going to be the same. on the other
Big
end.
mistake. Probably the biggest mistake we made, I think.
I think so too. But, you know, and therefore we did not ask for a lot of things to be done because we didn't want to piss off the seller.
Yeah.
You know, and
I mean, there were some little things that I wanted done.
Of course.
And he took care of them.
Right.
You know, fine. But there were so many other things that I would say maybe a half dozen other things that I would have said, well, let's talk about this, and this.
Right. But all in all, I really want to say we were very happy.
Oh, extremely happy.
Our outcome was great. We were able to sell our old house, move into a new house. Everything has been great from that point on, and we're not unhappy. But we did find that in looking back, you always have hindsight is 20/20, and we felt like this might be a good topic to discuss. Now, if you want to know more about how the whole thing unfolded, we have another podcast that we did earlier before we were doing the video podcast, and it's called Our Whirlwind Real Estate Weekend, I think, something like that.
Because we listed the house on a Friday. It had 16 showings that very weekend, and on the Monday, we sold the house.
We signed the papers.
Then we were under the gun. So make sure that you listen to that one. Again, the title is
Our Whirlwind Real Estate Weekend.
And thank you to Silvio Labrador, who was magnificent. And if you're up in the Essex County, Union County area, and you're thinking about buying or selling, Silvio is your guy. He still owes me a bottle of wine, by the way, from when we sold the house. His homemade wine. I never got it. And Silvio, if you think I'm going to forget that, you have another thing coming. I still want my bottle of wine. Hey, do us a favor. Do a couple of senior citizens a favor right now and give us a like and subscribe to the podcast because we don't make any money on this. We do it just for fun. But it does help us to get somewhat better distribution out there on the YouTube when you like and subscribe. So please do that. And maybe someday I'll come over and clean your toilets for you or something. Hey, until the next edition, I'm Pete Torriello.
And I'm Maureen Torriello.
Thank you for checking out the Sonic Boomers.